Hello, good evening, and welcome to another Live with Dr. Dawn. I'm your host, Dr. Dawn 𝗲𝗄𝗓, double board certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. I'm a two-time best-selling author, podcaster, public speaker, media influencer, sole practitioner of ADHD Wellness Center in Houston, Texas, host of Live with Dr. Dawn, and I'm also starting a new company, Mental Healthletics, later this month. And so more on that information, of course, later. But tonight, thank you so much for joining. Welcome again. Welcome. Please share this with everyone you know. Today, I am catching up with a wonderful friend of mine. We haven't caught up in months. And so this is very exciting to have Dan on. Dan is originally from London. He actually is born and raised in London, lives there. He's never lived here in the United States. Dan is in London. And so it's around 10 o'clock there, 4 o'clock here in Houston. And so we're going to actually catch up with Dan. But before we do, again, share this with everyone you know, invite them into the room. Let us hear your comments. Let's see your comments. We're here to ask questions. We're going to be talking about a list of things, partly just catching up, and then also talking about things that are going on in London right now, how COVID-19 has affected London, how the Black Lives Matter movement is going on there as well. If there's anything else going on Dan wants to share, he is more than welcome to do so. So please let me know that you're in the virtual space today. I would love to see your comments, your questions, and hey, join in on the conversation that we're about to have. All right. So I'm actually going to introduce you to Dan. Dan G is what I call him. Hi, Dan. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining me. You can talk now.
How you doing?
I'm well. So I'm just going to tell our audience it's a little bit of a delay.
Yeah,
so
cool.
I'm
you hear
going
me okay?
Yes, hear you perfectly.
Yeah.
Just explaining to our audience members that there's quite a delay. It's probably like a 7 to 8 second delay. So I'm going to try to keep my ADHD in check and not be impulsive and jump in there and just allow some time for you to hear questions and answer and things of that nature. So Dan, I'd like to start with you introducing yourself to people who do not know who you are. Please kindly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn. So I'm Dan. I've got ADHD. Originally, I've got a marketing agency, so I build websites and people showcase themselves online. And I started a podcast for other ADHDers, but more focused on entrepreneurship and starting a business and then growing that business. And so for the last probably 18 months, nearly 2 years, I've been speaking to people, getting a lot of interviews. That's how obviously we met. And, I've a lot of time productions, but I've just met some really cool people through ADHD and learned a lot about that. And it's opened so many doors. And I think speaking to people like that, it's just amazing. So that's what I'm doing now, just working with people with ADHD, as well as the marketing business.
And you've coined the term ADDtrepreneur. Can you tell us about how you came up with that? I mean, that's pretty amazing terminology to explain us who have ADHD and who are entrepreneurs. So, I mean, why ADDtrepreneur?
Yeah, so obviously with the marketing business and building websites, I was thinking more along the lines of how can I differentiate myself on that, and how can I niche down and focus and not just be a web designer and add value to people, and who can I work with. And for a couple of years I toyed with different ideas, but none of them really felt authentic. You could do websites for authors or websites for accountants and all these different things, but they didn't really feel authentic. And I've got friends that do that and do really well, and that's great for them. But for me, I know I've got ADHD and I'll get bored straight away. If it doesn't feel right, we could just give up or lose interest and something else will come along. So it wasn't overnight. I was thinking about things for a long time, and obviously learned about my ADHD. And then my son was diagnosed with ADHD, my eldest, and I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I was thinking all the time, how could I do it? And then reading things, and it just popped into my head, bring the two together, about entrepreneurship and ADHD. And it was one of these things. I didn't want to jump into it and, like everything else, and start something and not finish it or not go anywhere. And I sat on the idea for, well, not for long, probably 24 hours to be fair. I wrote things down, brainstormed a bit, got myself a domain before, thinking of anything else. The name came straight up in my head when I was thinking about it. And then I just went on some forums. I went on Reddit, I went on Facebook, spoke to people, and the feedback was amazing. As soon as I put this out there, people were messaging me before I'd even said anything really. So yeah, it just worked for me, and it just opened doors.
It has, and that's how we met. I know, very attracted to you coming up with that name, and then knowing the person or beginning to learn who you were behind the name was just awesome for me as well. I think we met 2 years ago, about two and a half years ago, and
nearly.
Yeah, and
well, thanks, Alice.
Oh yes, you see Alice, yes. And one of the things that I don't know that if the audience is familiar with, or those who are live with us who may be looking at this on the replay, but those who are entrepreneurs, so those who are business owners, whether it's big or small, it's been actually studied that those who are entrepreneurs, the ones that are really great at doing entrepreneurship, majority have ADHD. And if you think about that, and there's one in the United States, like Richard Branson. I mean, he's this incredible entrepreneur who has severe ADHD. He's actually talked openly about that, a billionaire, right? And there's so many other people. There's the list goes on and on. But entrepreneurship, it takes a lot to have your own business, to have, keep it together, maintain a fluent business, and to basically be that, I guess, set yourself apart, right, in the world. And one of the things that I appreciated about you and your podcast was that you showcased businesses all over the globe, of those who have ADHD.
Yeah.
And yes. Oh no, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
I think for a lot of people, I think when they've got ADHD and they've got a business, like you say, loads of people are successful and they're doing amazingly. But a lot of people that I've spoke to, who share the same traits, will work really hard on something, and for project work especially, you'll work on something and that's done. The client would love that, but in our mind, we can always go back and do more. And a lot of people, especially like creative work, will carry on working past the point, where they've been paid for it, they need to move on. But because they're perfectionists and we like doing things and including things, we'll kind of get too involved in that one thing. And a lot of people have done that, or they'll start a business, and like myself, they'll have 10 ideas and jump into 10 ideas, one after another, without really following through on the first, 9 they'll be working on them with 10. And it's so many people, when you speak to them, have done that. And I think now it's just trying to teach people, you need to stick to that one before you go into the next thing. Stick to that one, really focus on building that one. And yet it's not saying don't do something else. Lots of people have multiple businesses, but also obviously get the ball rolling on this one, build it so it can run itself, take people on, which is another really scary thing. We are perfectionists. A lot of people are perfectionists, and we like things done in a certain way. But so giving someone else a certain task is really difficult, especially when it's project work. You've got your own way of doing things, and I think it's hard not to micromanage. But also, you need to understand that to get to the things that you need to be doing and to really be successful, you need to learn to delegate and get rid of all the tasks that take up your time and that you struggle with or procrastinate with. Just get rid of them.
Yes, and that's real, And starting off talking about the success of those who are entrepreneurs with ADHD, there is a flip side to this. And it's not a journey where you go from having problems with organizing to becoming the successful entrepreneur. It's a daily struggle. Would you say that? It's a daily struggle to try to find your own way. And even if you have an established routine and way of doing things, it still is a struggle. One day we can feel motivated, hyper-focused on something, get it done. And then the next 3 days, there's no drive. There's a lack of motivation. things get put aside and, procrastination sets in. You're exactly right. And I'm glad you point that out, because that's the reality of this condition. And most of the time, Dan, I had previously talked about the positivity of ADHD, because I do feel it's an amazing ability, but something so amazing does also have its setbacks. It's not 100%. This is what my life is like. This is how successful I am every day. This is how I got here easily. No, it's work. It's a lot of work. So ADHD there in England is not different than ADHD here in the United States. Is that what you're saying?
No, not yeah. Well, the condition, no, it's when you speak to people, it's strange. I think because I knew I had ADHD growing up, and I didn't know a lot about the condition. I grew up, I had this thing. I was epileptic, so I never had medication, and I got to a certain age where I didn't know about this condition. Nobody ever taught me about it, and obviously we didn't have social media, we didn't have the internet, obviously, until probably the 90s, and it was just this thing that I didn't really know about. And then I got to 16 and I read the book by is it 𝗃𝗄𝗄𝗓? And so I had that book. I'm not crazy, lazy, stupid, or crazy, and that for me, was amazing. I thought, I'm 16, I've got this book, and I didn't realize I could still have this. And I think for me, a lot of people will learn about things and want to keep learning about things, but something will pop up and it will just go a different direction. And for a long time, then I'd go off and do the things that we're expected to do, not realizing I could get help for ADHD until later in life. And I spoke to people on Facebook groups, and you realize that some of the things you'd not even heard of are related to your ADHD. Like time blindness is a big thing for me, and I think the fact that you can high achieve in business or certain roles, you can fly, you can do really well, but then you've got to organize something and you just fall apart, or turning up to things, or you forget about things, and people think you're just lazy, or you're just ignorant or rude, or all these different things. But then we can be absolutely great at other things, and I think those kind of things aren't really well known. I think in the US, there seems to be a bit more education around the ADHD. Whereas here, there was, I wrote in an article, I was doing some research, and I found out when I was younger, so early 90s, there was only around, 200 patients in the UK, children and adults, that were on medication in the whole of the country, well, whole of Britain, because the NHS, really, really didn't want to prescribe. So now that a lot of people have been getting diagnosed later on, and they're finding things earlier, and people are in their 40s and 50s, the only things you do read once in a while are still negative, so we've come really far on other conditions, like mental health, like depression, and that's praised, but you'll get ADHD and the things, it's the same as a lot of things. Obviously the agenda in the press it's to shock, but the things in the press, we'll hear that, this is to sell drugs, so doctors sign off because they get commission and all that. That doesn't happen. It's just the fact that we're more aware, we're more equipped, and more people that have had this condition are learning about themselves because we've got more access to information. So I think it's that. I think we're still quite behind. I think the services are available, but obviously the NHS, I know we have a National Health Service, but that's kind of a lottery depending on where you live. So depending on where you live in the country, you could get an amazing service. There will be services available, but sometimes you go to somewhere else and there's a 2 or 3 year waiting list to be diagnosed. That's before you even get assessed and all this, and that could be adults and children. So I think we're good in some ways and we're getting better, but the access to help is not great, and then the aftercare. But there's companies that have come along. They've been commissioned by the National Health Service to do online appointments, and they've realised that they can be with the times. They don't need to be 30 years ago technology-wise. They can be now. They can assess people based on information. They don't need to travel, across the country to get this information. And they can do it, and they can save money and time for everyone. So that is happening. We're getting there. It's just, I think we're not great here still.
Yes. I mean, it got to the point where I believe 4 years ago, where the royal family actually of Prince Harry, Prince William, I believe the Duke Catherine, didn't they actually join forces in creating a movement to assist in getting people mental health services for all of England. Is that correct? And
yeah. Prince William's quite involved in a lot of things towards that, which is great. But I say a lot of things are still focused on, you know, depression, and which is great. You know, shine a light on things, because suicide is a massive killer, which is perfect. But there's still a lot of things. You know, I worked in the National Health Service in emergency services for 13, 14 years, and that condition, I never mentioned that for a long time. And, you know, when I did, it was kind of, that was the reason I didn't, came out, you know. That role suited me perfectly. Obviously I wanted to start a business and go into that way, but, you know, that kind of role was brilliant. And I got to a certain point, you know, where I was being late for work and things. I always was, but I kind of got away with that, because that's just, I was really good at my job without, you know, floating my own boat, but I was brilliant at my job. So that kind of masked over the other issues, like lateness. And someone, you know, it took a new manager would come in and complain and say this, you know, you need to start getting to work on time. And I thought, well, I've been 13 years now, I'm late every day. You know, but so I said at one point, I said, you know, I've learned actually I've got this condition, you know about that anyway, but I've actually realised that you know, time blindness and these kind of things, not because I'm late on purpose, and that's a condition. So I'd like to find out if I can get like a flexible start window for work, and it just didn't really work that well for me. And there was that there. I didn't really feel like, you know, there was that support, and there's not for a lot of people. You know, there's laws in place, obviously, same as the US, about discrimination, but I think for us, it's still very difficult for a lot of people in a lot of industries.
Yes, it is. Can you talk to us a little bit about, Dan, comorbidities that you've experienced along with your ADHD?
Yeah, so I mean, when I was younger, I'm not sure of a lot of things. I was, you know, typical ADHD boy, and that's what, to me, for a long time, was what I understood the condition. So I was a naughty boy in school. I was just you know, super hyperactive but funny. Got on with people. I was always nice to people. But yeah, I struggled with some things, and I think, you know, I was quite clever, but then I was epileptic and always poorly. But yes, some of the things I think I've had with that, maybe, again, like, you know, struggling with rejection. If something doesn't go my way, it doesn't mean like, you know, like a decision at work or something will change. And if it's not how I want it, I've kind of like, that'll be like a balloon bursting. Your whole kind of like mood would just deflate because of that. So I think, you know, being sensitive to rejection is a big thing. And I think there's a lot like that. I'm not really sure about what else condition wise, not really like OCD, but I think a lot of things, you know, it has to be my way, or that's it really. But I think when you get used to that, you know, my sister was a lot older. She's a few years older than me, and didn't. I was mainly at home with my parents, obviously, because I was quite poorly. So I think I got a lot like that. Got a lot of things my way. But I think when you get used to that and you get into like a job where you're in charge of everything anyway, so you can delegate and all this kind of thing, you're used to, you know, just doing your own thing and things going your way. And then when something doesn't, and someone does step in and say, you know, that can't happen like that, I think that just kind of builds it up a bit more. And we're not great at that, are we? Like,
No.
It's like dealing with change. Change is horrendous. Even though it's great, and we know it can be great, it's just the whole thought of actually something changing.
You're so right about that. It could be a great change, but yet and still is so much effort behind moving with the change that can be overwhelming for a lot of us. You're exactly right. And did you ever at any point feel that even at your job, when you were told to do or instructed to do something different, did that affect your your personal self-worth? Did that change your mood and how you felt about the job, about yourself at all?
Yeah, massively. I think even now, I mean, I've been with my partner we met at work, so the ambulance service. So luckily we've been together for a long time. I think I've always had a problem with authority for whatever reason. I don't know why either. It's not against anything, you know. I'm quite happy. I understand, you know, if I've done something wrong, I should be punished. But if someone told me to do something, it doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if it's a police or a school teacher or a manager at work. If someone tells me, and I don't like the way, I don't know why. You know, I understand that that's their role, and I get every single part of that. But for whatever reason, I just get angry, and you know, I won't do something if someone tells me to do it. I've always struggled with that. That's why I got in trouble at school. But you know, if if I've worked with someone and they ask you something in a different way, and they're a bit polite about it and they're nice, it just happens differently, doesn't it? I think a lot of people are like that. We get very defensive, and it's that feeling, isn't it? Like you're being told to do something or forced into something, and we don't like that. But yeah, I think with work, when I was doing a lot of things, I just wouldn't do certain things. I'd carry on how I was, or get people to do things for me. But I think after a while, I started getting depressed because not really the role. I mean, the job was fine, but it got to a certain point where I didn't progress. I got promoted a few times really quickly, and it was great. And it was probably the thing that made me happy. That was like, it was like impulsive shopping. You get a little burst of something great happening, and it's great. You get promoted and all this kind of thing. But it got to a point, where I was bored in the role. There wasn't this progression going to be happening, and you could kind of see yourself. There's only 2 more roles you could actually get to on this corporate ladder. And I think that from there, when you start realizing that, I think, 5-10 years I'll be doing the same thing. That's when, for me, you can't get frustrated, and it just starts getting a bit different. I think for a long time as well, when you realize you want to be doing something else, and you get kind of stuck in this rut, don't you? And that's for me when depression started kicking in. But obviously it took a while.
And when that happened for you, what did you do? How was your course of experiencing that depression? Were you able to get help? I mean, were you able to talk this out with your wife or your loved ones?
Yeah, I think it takes probably took me a long time, probably nearly a year, or I think it's one of the things that's like a slow burner. It just built up, doesn't it? So, I'd planned to leave my job quite a long time before that, and we had 2 more children. We were amazing. So our life plans changed as well. We sold one house and planned to do certain things. We were going to get married at this point. We had money from the house to do that, and we went on a holiday to Orlando again. So that, for us, that's like, I think, £10,000-12,000. We did this a couple of times and all these things, and then found out we're having the baby. So our holiday got put back, and all these different things. But then, the career move that I was going to do, I was going to leave my job at this point. It couldn't happen, and all these kind of things probably added to it. And I was getting, I think, down about it, but not realizing for a while. And it took a long time, to realize, the things I like to do, like, especially with the business side of it and my podcasts, I wasn't in the right frame of mind to do that. And I realised after a while, I think I was getting snappy. I was not very engaged with my friends at work and things like this. And it took a while to realise I was not in a great place. But I went to the doctor eventually. I went to the GP and got help, and they put me on antidepressants. But still, for me, that I didn't really talk to anyone for a long time. I didn't tell anyone at work. My partner was the only person I told, and my mother. And that was literally it for a long time. And I was missing meetings. I'm a politician as well. So I do all sorts of things, but I'm a local politician. So I was, if I was having a bad day and felt down, I didn't want to go and speak to all these different people or speak in public, I'd avoid going, and then I'd make something up, or the children are poorly, or all these different things, putting it off. And then it took a long time before a long few months before I realised. I spoke to someone at the council, in local politics, like our leader, and I went and sat down to her and said, look, I'm not turning up because I don't want to be there. I love this and it's fun, but I've been suffering with depression. And I think from the moment I actually sat and had a chat with someone, it was amazing. She was really supportive, and she told me about her son who'd been going through something similar. He's a bit older than me, but she was chatting about a lot of things, and they really supported me then. And it was like, she wasn't going to tell loads of people, but also that support was there. So if I need to talk to someone, I think just knowing that, and people understanding as well that you're not just, being lazy or slacking off and this kind of thing, it makes a big difference. It's weight off your shoulders. And then anytime I felt down, I spoke to my partner. And this kind of went on for a long time, feeling down, and in this circle of, I need to leave my job, but to start my business full time, and to do this, all the other things that I want to do, but also I need to keep providing for my family. I've got a really good wage coming in. And it built up over time, and I think I was getting, I was late to work and all these different pressures, and not getting the things done at home that I wanted to do. and spending more money as well to get to work. You know, we had a £40,000 car at one point, a big brand new Range Rover or Land Rover Discovery, and all these different things. So he's putting all this money into this stuff, and I thought, well, no, I can't leave work because I'm tied to this car and all this stuff. But then the job pays for that car, and if I didn't have that, I wouldn't need to earn half as much. So all this stuff goes on, and it got to a point where it just kind of blew up. I was asking for help at work, you know, just to start work later because I was late, and didn't get that. And one day I think I just snapped, and I swore at a patient, and I had enough, and that was it. Then I went out. I got suspended from work as well, which is pretty strange. You know, all these people I've worked with for 13, 14 years. I had a phone call to go to turn up to work one day, and I went in and I had to hand my ID badge in, and I was told, you know, you're suspended. And then they kind of said, you know, it's really bad. You're probably going to get sacked. And then for me, that moment as well, I think hearing that and realising they escorted me out of the building as well to, you know, from all these paramedics were there, and I got walked out of the building, you know, and all these people are the people that are under me. I supervise all of these and give the work to them every single day and all this. So I think the fact that I wanted to leave was, obviously it goes out the window. It's not in your head. You're just thinking about, you know, straight away, I can't pay my bills. We're about to move house. We've had an amazing house to move into. And all of a sudden I think I'm going to have to go and tell my partner that we can't have that house. We're going to be stuck in the house we're in, because we had 2 more children from you know, a couple of years back. So we had 4 in total. I think all these things we've talked about and were happening just aren't happening. And that's my fault, because I've ruined that for, you know, for one silly moment that was just me being impulsive and shouting at someone, was gone. And I think for then it was really hard, but I wanted to go and kill myself. I remember that, thinking that when I walked out of that door, got into my car, and I thought, you know, the best thing I can do now, as horrible as it sounds, I've got life insurance and that. I thought if I crash and don't hurt anyone, then I die, and that's fine. It was like an accident, you know, she'll get money and support, and I've still got a job, so she'll get my pension and some different money. But I thought about that for a while, but eventually I went home and I talked to my partner, you know, and I said what had happened, and she luckily was quite supportive and said, you know, it doesn't matter, you wanted to do this anyway. And I think for a while, you know, that went on. We had through like really, really bad months, you know, when I wasn't at work, I didn't know what to do. And then in the end, I resigned, because I probably would have been sacked if I'm honest. I could have fought it. I could have said, you know, you've not supported me, you've not done this, and this is why. But at the end of the day, I resigned. I thought, this is not healthy. I think even then, you know, resigning, and you've got people from work that you've worked with for years contacting you and asking stuff, it's really difficult. And you're still thinking, have I made the right decision? You know, am I ever going to be able to earn enough, and all this different stuff? And it was horrible. I had some really horrible times, you know, where you couldn't even speak to people. I couldn't pick up the phone to the people that were contacting me about actual work for the business, because there was days where you can't speak to someone for whatever reason. I couldn't even speak to my parents. You can't answer the phone or anything. But I think speaking about that and telling your partner as well, obviously the closest person that got to me, and telling her how I felt was amazing. Just having someone there. And I think even if it wasn't my partner, I could have told my sister or my mother, you know, but I live with her and I'm with her all the time. And, you know, always there's the children involved. But there was a few days, you know, where she'd go out with the children, or they'd be at school and she'd go out with the others. And, you know, I'd get something else, bad news, you know, because I've left this job now and haven't got the wage. I'd get something through the post, like a big bill, and think, you know, I can't pay that. And again, all of a sudden that would just be like that bubble bursting, and you feel like you're okay, and then something happens and it's just not. Yeah, we gave our car back, and that was fine. We got rid of the big car. I bought another car. Leading up to that, it cost a lot of money on finance, and I couldn't pay the finance. You know, so I got someone knocking the door saying, you know, we're going to get your car repossessed. That's so embarrassing. All these different things, but then at the end of the day, I thought, you know, it's a piece of metal. It's not a nice car. I didn't like it anyway. I'm paying money for it, and I think by thinking about things differently and talking about it, when you hear other people talking about it, you put it into perspective. You can kind of get through that. But you do understand, you know, why people, especially when we're impulsive, will go and do something silly, like really stupid. But yeah, it was horrible. You know, and even now, that was probably last year. That was just over a year ago. That all happened. It was last July 2019. And that obviously dragged on for a few months as well, until I decided to just, you know, don't fight it, don't do anything, because it's not healthy. Just stop thinking about it and just carry on and move on. And that's been really good. But even you know, sometimes you'll have some horrible days. And then we'll go through obviously part of that was being re-diagnosed as an adult, because I had a diagnosis as a child, I then tried to access help as an adult, it wasn't available because I said, you can't get this help because you've got a diagnosis, and we can't diagnose someone who's got a diagnosis, but we can't treat you either, which is bizarre. So we had to go down the private route, and that was so much better. But doing that as well, and speaking to a doctor, him agreeing that you have got ADHD, obviously because you already have, you still have, and they can finally help was amazing. But then we kind of started the medication and tried different things, titrating the medication, and there was one that I took. It wasn't methylphenidate, it was another one. But we took this medication and it was horrendous, for mental health. And for whatever reason, it just didn't agree with me. I had this medication and it was just horrible for you. I didn't realize at first it was this medication. I just thought, I just feel really down for no reason. But I stopped taking it, for a couple of days. After probably a couple of weeks of feeling really horrible, I stopped taking it for a few days and felt fine again. Then I took half of it and it was a bit bad, and I took a whole one, just to see. And it was horrendous. It was like this really dark place. It's like someone switched on a switch in your brain. So obviously I went back to the psychiatrist and the nurse team and told them, and we just didn't take that again. And that was it. But obviously you don't understand how these things can affect you obviously differently. And that's ADHD medication. So it's scary to think, you could have been taking this, not realizing it was this, feeling you're depressed, and then you could do something silly because it's just a medication. But yeah, thankfully I'm on the methylphenidate now, the extended release, and it's fine. But again, that as well, what the realization when you get this medication that you've been, I've never had ever. I'm 36, I've always had ADHD, but not been medicated. They've tried whatever they tried as a child. But I think when you get that, you think, oh wow, I'm going to get this thing, it's going to fix everything. All these different things are going to be amazing, and I'm going to be like super dad, super businessman, all this kind of thing. And it's not a magic pill, is it? That's disappointing as well. That's a big disappointment. But also that we've had lockdown since I started that medication, so children be at home. It's not the same anyway. The environment's different. But I think when you realise that, and you start thinking, it's done some great things, but it's not a magic pill. It's not a magic bullet. It's not, like Limitless, the film, the movie with Bradley. It's not that. So don't ever think that, and for people think that as well, don't they? People have said that to me, is it like this? No, it's not. Or it's amazing, isn't it? I've seen things about people being addicted to it, and it's great, can I have one? Well, no, mate, it's not about that. No, it's not a magic pill. It helps, but you also need to understand, what works for you and how to make things work for you better, and have support and strategies. So yeah.
Man,
that was quite long-winded.
No, you're fine though. You're fine. Listen, it's okay. I want to just recant what you've talked about though, because I think it takes a lot of, like I was telling you before, prior to us coming on, it's power and vulnerability. And when we are vulnerable, it's no longer about us. It's more about the person who's listening. And it takes a lot of courage for you to open up about your story, because there's someone out there that is going through what you've been through, and they just want to have a sense of hope. They don't have it inside of them, but you've just given it to them by sharing your story. The thing about ADHD that I often don't talk about, that I'm starting to talk about now more, is that it's often associated with anxiety, depression. These are two common conditions that share the same space sometimes with ADHD. And being an ADHDer, it's difficult to understand that, hey, this is not normal, especially if you're born with it, right? And then you understand sometime in life, like, wait, something is not right. Like, I'm not supposed to be reacting this way. I'm not supposed to be having these thoughts. I'm not supposed to be feeling the way that I feel. And so, again, it takes courage for you to open that door and try to figure out if this is natural, if it's natural to feel this way. With a loved one, is to talk to someone about it. And that's the other point I want to bring up. Thank God that you were able to talk, especially starting with your wife, about this, because you're right. I think that's where it starts, because oftentimes, and this does not relate to ADHD, this just relates to being human and living life. A lot of times we get in our head that this is how it's supposed to be, whatever it is. And sometimes it becomes irrational, especially if we start thinking more about that thing. And so sometimes it does, our loved ones invite a different perspective. They probably, give us some ideas that, hey, it's going to be all right, reassurance, support. And thank God and that's why it's so important for us to talk about it. It's so important for us to talk about it because it can be the nature of depression that gets you in that state where there is no hope. And this is the only way out. And that's not true because that's the nature of what depression is, And so I'm so happy that you were able to share that with your wife. And now you're sharing it, on the platform. And the last thing I wanted to kind of bring up when you brought up, just to recant, is about treatment for ADHD. There's no cure. People think that we do become super beings when we're on our medicine, and because it's a stimulant, that's not why it's called a stimulant. It doesn't stimulate us. It's called a stimulant because it stimulates the release of chemicals that our brain is not naturally producing enough of. That's why it's called a stimulant. And so when people now understand that, hopefully that changes the perspective of what they think that we can do. We're not superhuman. We still don't have it right, Dan. You're right. I mean, there's professional organizations out here that think that we take this medicine, that we are superpowers and superhuman. And if we're involved in sports, that we can be better than God made us. And that's not it at all. We're not even at the starting line as any other person who doesn't have ADHD. We're actually behind. But this medicine or treatment allows us to be at the same starting line, not past it. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And then just the course of treatment, finding the right treatment for you is not necessarily going to happen overnight, and is not going to necessarily be 100%. You're exactly right. And I think that is an important distinction for people to understand, that you can find the right treatment for you, but it's not what people realize. It's that there's a misperception about that. So thanks for bringing all these valuable points up. I really appreciate that, because I think it's important for us as globally to understand that that's how it is, regardless of where you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think from, sorry, I was to say, I think from people on Facebook and Reddit, you'll see people, talking about medication and, they're going to get diagnosed or they're getting treatment finally. And because of such waiting lists, and people really build it up and they've got all the hopes up and they're pinning it on it. And then there's that disappointment, isn't there? Because they get this and they are treated and then they haven't got the results they want. And it's not just a quick fix. And I think realizing that it's horrible. I think there should be more information about that and more education around that, because there seems to be lacking. I'm not sure what it's like in the States, but when you couple that with other things and you realize, what you struggle with and how you can help yourself, and other people around you can help you if you've got that support network as well. That's what starts making the difference, isn't it? And these are just, these are another part of that support. Mm-hmm. They're not a quick fix.
You're exactly right. And I'm going to have to speak on the behalf of being an ADHD expert. There needs to be more of us. It's not just the population. I mean, this is the most common condition in kids, the second most common condition globally in kids. And you were exactly right. There needs to be more of us who specialize in managing this condition for our communities, especially if it's as common as it is. And not just with kids, but adults too. There was a later paper out, I believe it was late June, that identified and suspected that 10 million adults in the United States live with ADHD. 10 million. I have been saying 8.1 million because that was the latest stat from our last research done back in 2015, 2016. So now it's suspected 10 million. There are somewhere on the spectrum. Now, people may commonly joke about ADHD saying, I have a little ADHD, I'm on the spectrum, but this is an actual cognitive condition. Like, no, you're talking about being human. Like, no one's perfect. You may forget this here and there, but we struggle with this condition every single day. And, as long as we know how to manage it, though, I feel it can be definitely beneficial for us, but it takes effort and it takes commitment. And every day is not going to be the same. You're exactly right. So thanks for sharing your story, part of your story.
Anytime. Yeah. I think I think as well for children and adults as well. Obviously, you can I think for the older generation, of older people, I met someone in a 50-odd-year-old guy a couple of weeks back. He's had some business success and done really well, but he's also made some big mistakes and lost money and houses and all sorts. And it's sad. And I think those kind of people, when they're later in life, can look back once they realise they've got ADHD. I think that's what can get you as well, can get you down and, you know, looking back at what could have happened. But obviously it's important also to see, well, I've got this. I understand it now. I'm going to learn more about that, and this is how I can go forward. Because you're never too old, are you? You're never too late to fix things or to progress, and that's a big thing. You know, you could be 20 years old thinking, I should have done this when I was 16, but you could also be 50 or 60 thinking, well, you know, I've still got another 20, 30 years left yet to do my thing, and that's the big thing. It's just about how you process that and how you think about that and the context.
That's right.
For me, I think for children, like, you know, for my son, if I help him get into a different mindset from now, or I help a couple of people, that's amazing. But one of the big things I think is, if you're not from a business background or nobody in your family has got a business, or even certain jobs, but I think you've got this expectation, and when you've got, you know, your family want you to go to college or university over here, and they want you to do this certain thing or get this certain job or have a job. You know, they're seeing you struggle in school, they want you to have a job. That's it, a job and a stable, you know, a bit of a stable life. But I think when you realise that, you know, you haven't got anyone else's expectations to live to, you're you, and you can do things differently. It doesn't have to be a certain way. I think if children grow up like that, they've got a lot more chance, or just that bit, you know, to say it's okay to fail. It's okay to, you know, if you want to start something and it doesn't go well, it's not failing, it's learning. You know, if you learn something from that, then that's better than anything else. That's better than you wasting 5 years on something and getting upset about it. You know, take it as a learning curve and, you know, get those mistakes and move on to the next thing. I think that's really, really important for the younger people to learn.
It is. It really is. One more thing that I want to mention about ADHD and its connection is that when you look at our prison incarceration system and our prison system, and you look at, I mean, there's a number of reasons why people are in prison, unfortunate reasons. One highly being systemic racism, especially in the United States. Another being mental health conditions that were never treated, never discovered, and therefore not treated, right? And I think that is something that we also need to be more promoting more awareness and education about, especially at a young age, when you're dealing with kids who are getting in trouble for things. I mean, we have to look behind the action. What is the reason? What's driving them there? Where's the support? Who do they have to fight in their corner to understand them and their decision making? And, you know, I'm not sure how that is in London. But here, you know, it's something that has to be done. It's because we're not doing it. We're not doing enough of that. And so that leads to another trajectory of life where they just never had a chance in living the life that they want. And I think that's important for people to understand globally as well, that this is something that affects all parts of our lives potentially. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for young men, especially for anyone really, but for young men, and obviously you're a product of your surroundings, and I think the people you surround yourself with. So for me, we lived in a like impoverished area growing up, and it was like local authority housing. So I'm not sure what the state's version is, but like my parents were on benefits. And my mum was a single mum, and we moved to a house, and it was, you know, cars were getting petrol bombed like outside and stuff, but and all this different stuff, people being shot and all sorts. It had a bit of a reputation, but it was just, you know, there's lots of areas like that. And I think growing up, it's so easy to, you know, just follow in with the people you're around and you live with, because we're impulsive as well. We're often the ones that will, you know, do things. And for me, a big thing, obviously, I was always in trouble at home, or to hang around like the local estate and where we lived, like the neighbourhood. And I remember being really young and the police pulling up, and the older kids would be shouting things at them, so then I'd do the same. But, you know, I'd probably do a bit more than that because I was a bit more daring, because I didn't really process things properly. And I got into a lot of trouble when I was younger, around my neighbourhood, just doing silly things. Obviously, as you get older, you get to a teenager, that gets more serious. And I think for me, because obviously I had the expectation of getting a job, I did a couple of really silly things and got into trouble with the law and got arrested and luckily for me, it was different then, and I did something really stupid out of a group of friends that we were all going to do as well. But I kind of obviously jumped in and did that. I don't talk about this very often, but obviously I stole a car. I don't want to have my kids to hear, but they're hopefully asleep. But yeah, so but basically I did a lot of things, all sorts of stuff. And when I was 15, you know, I had some really good friends that were like, didn't live where I live, so I was lucky that they were from different areas. And you know, a lot of friends wouldn't come to where I lived because they didn't like the estate or didn't want to go there because they were scared. But I remember we went to a party once, and then someone said to me, you know, I've got this key for a car, like a brand new car, and the parents are away. We're going to drive it. Do you want to come? And they were like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And it was kind of like a thing, because I was like, yeah, go on, and I'll do it. And then it was like, yeah, we're all going to have a go. And it turned into, you know, I did that. I jumped in the car, started it. I couldn't drive. And obviously we have gears over here, so it's not like, you know, we have sticks. So we jumped in the car and couldn't really get very far. But then we learned that. We're going to figure it out, drove the car and drove around the estate. But then my friends didn't actually drive. You know, it got to this point where, hold on, I thought you were going to drive, but they didn't. They were scared then. And I thought, well, I've done it now. I'm in the car. And yeah, you don't really think about it. You're thinking about it, but you're not, obviously, because you're just enjoying it and being silly. And yeah, I got chased by the police. So we were driving around like the neighbourhood, got chased by the police, and that was horrendous. So I drove off and somehow didn't crash, jumped out of the car and ran away. And we got away. But then we got caught the next day because, you know, the police were looking for people, and, you know, go to your friend's house and they tell them, you know, they've said this about you, they snitched on you and all this. And one of my friends, you know, admitted everything and said, oh, it was him. So yeah, that happens. And then, you know, for me, I was facing, you know, time in prison or juvie, this kind of thing. And that could have like shaped your life then, I think. And, you know, I was 15, I'd really upset my parents, disappointed in me and all this, which was the biggest thing to me. But also I knew that, you know, I might not get good grades at school, but it'll get to the point where you know, where it shapes what you do. And I think for me, if you did go to prison and did all this kind of thing, it'd be different then. You wouldn't go and have a job. You didn't think about having a business, because back then it was, you know, you had to have money to have a business. But I think for a lot of people, they go to that point and they get to a certain point and they just think, well, that's it now. That's what I'm going to do. This is the people I need to hang around with. But yeah, I had a lucky escape, and for whatever reason, thank God, it kind of went away. And even though I was banged to rights and, you know, they knew everything, it just went away. So that was like a real change of look. And it made me think, you know, I don't need to hang around with the people I hang around with. I need to, you know, my sensible friends. And luckily I found some really sensible friends from different areas. But it does make you understand that a lot of people get to a point and that's it then. They think there's no going back and they don't get the support. And like you say, racism, it's probably a lot worse over there. But for me, being white, I see it differently. My sister's mixed race, so my sister's black. You know, seeing my sister go out and things people would say to her differently. She's a lot older than me. She's different as well. She's very, you know, not quiet, but she's good with words and really well organised and total opposite to me. But seeing her when she was younger be bullied and things do to people, it's just different. And you see young black men, where I was, young black guys I was hanging around with when I was a teenager. They walk into a shop and, you know, security would follow us. And for me, obviously, I'm white. I go uptown every weekend or go to shops, and that never happened. But I got out of these friends that were black, and we'd be followed around like we've stole something before we've even been in the shop. And I think for a lot of them, I think you've got this label anyway that you're a thief or you're bad or you're criminal. And I think, you know, you do that and you think, well, why not? You know, if someone's going to tell you can't do something, you can do something else, or because of the way you look or because of your skin that you can do something. I think they just get to a point where they'll just do that anyway. Because you think everyone thinks like that. And sadly, people think, you know, everyone's like that in the world. And, you know, I'm not going to get a job because of this, even though they're not, you know, they're too young to process that. But obviously they haven't developed that much either in their mind. So they go off and do things and they make money and that follows. And for some people that can end in death and all sorts, or a life of crime and in and out of prison. That happens to a lot of people. And you look at a lot of them, you think, well, that's because of one or two things you've done and you're impulsive and you probably got ADHD and you've not been told or got the support.
I think that it's so valuable that you have a family member who's Black or you have friends who are Black, because you get it. You've actually been there to witness some of the things, horrendous things that they've gone through. And let's talk about racism. And because I think that's important, that's one other part of our relationship that I love, that we can talk about anything and learn from each other and try to understand each other's cultures and how they're dealing with, the social issues that's going on globally. How about the Black Lives Movement matter in England? How is that actually manifested as a part of the global movement in trying to understand why Black Lives Matter?
Yeah. So I think the whole movement of everything seems to be so blown up because of COVID and what's going on. And, it's like anything at the minute, anything big happens, it's just huge. But the whole Black Lives Matter, I think a lot of it in the press, you'll see things, about these people writing and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't happen. You see certain things in the press. It's the same as COVID when people are saying, people are all out in having the like beaches. People are going to the beach, and there's thousands of people there, and they're not really. If you see things on social media from someone that really lives in these places, and they'll tell you, that's from a couple of years back. This photo that's appeared is not a real photo. It's just chucked in to sensationalize something that isn't even real, and that kind of happened with Black Lives Matter as well. So you'll see people walking through the streets peacefully, talking. They're not drinking alcohol. They're just walking. The white people, black people, but they're just walking. That's it. And then meet at one big area and have some banners up and they're talking about it on social media. But then you'll get the opposite end where it's social media again. People are putting pictures on saying, this is what happened. And it's a picture of a police officer bleeding, lying on the floor bleeding. And people are saying, these are the people that are protecting us through COVID. But black people have attacked them. And they haven't. That's not true at all. It's a picture that's, someone else has found the picture and it's come out a couple of years ago from some big sports event or whatever else has happened. And people do that, but obviously you realise that and someone's found that. But a lot of people just see the picture and read it. And for me, that fuels racism. And I think a lot of it is ignorance. But for me, there is a lot of racism, but a lot of it is also ignorance. People were saying, I got into arguments on social media with people, I say, especially politician-wise, people were saying, all lives matter. But that's not the point.
Right.
You see so many sort of versions of this online, don't you? But I had an argument with someone who said, there was a guy outside a local store. So he was outside a store with a banner, and the guy was Asian. He was Indian, we'll say, but he was Asian, and he had a banner up saying "All lives matter." And someone said, "Oh, because he's not white, that's great." I said, "But it's not, is it? It doesn't matter what color he is. It could be black, it could be white, it could be black. He's not racist. That's not the point." And I said this to someone on social media, and all people were saying, "Oh, you're a snowflake and you're easily offended." I said, "Oh, I'm not. It's the whole point of saying this is because there's an issue. If you're saying all lives matter, yeah, of course they do, but that's not the point. We shouldn't be praising this guy. He's taken away what people are trying to do by doing that, and people are saying things to him. And then luckily, people were saying, you're right." But I think a lot of people that were coming on, I don't think they were racist. The comments were just loads of them, and I don't think they were racist. I think they just didn't understand the problem because they've not faced that. So, and I think where we live now, there's not many black people. There's a couple of black people, I think 2 or 3 black families, and that's it. Whereas where I'm from, there's, it's every day. The people around me, it's just, you don't bat an eyelid. The family are black and white and everyone. But around where we are now, it's quite a white area. And I think if you're older, you've never experienced that and you don't understand that, then you don't understand the problem. But that is half the problem. By making these comments, you don't have to be racist, but you're ignorant and you don't understand it. You're uneducated. So that's a big battle. But then obviously the other part is that the people that are lying, they're making things up, or they say, this happened, this monument was damaged. That's because black people did that. But it's not. It was damaged because of whatever happened. But then you get the people going out and they'll say, "Oh, well, these fought in the military. They're armed forces for our country. They're soldiers, so they're not racist. They protect us." But they might have done that. That doesn't mean they're not shouting horrible things to people and shouting racist terms, even to the white people, calling them, horrible things because people are walking past. And you can't say, "Well, he's a soldier. He's great. He's British." He's not. He's racist. Just because he wore a uniform, he doesn't represent all the armed forces that are all mixed, different colours and different backgrounds. And it's just horrible when you see social media, I think, because there's so many ways it can go and so many people believe certain things. But one example we talked about was soccer. So we see a big movement, people are walking around and peaceful. We see the videos and I know a lot of people involved, and not all of them were social distanced at the time, but that's happened with all sorts of things. Street parties for our VE Day, so our Veterans Day, like after a big war. I think it was the end of World War II or something. But either way, I probably should know. But a big military day, so the whole country, partying because it was a big thing. We'd been locked down for ages. Everyone was out in the street on their front lawns, sitting there with the kids and stuff and enjoying it, and neighbours were speaking, but at a distance. But then it got to the evening, and a lot of the people without kids, the older people, they were drinking, they were congregating, and the Queen's speech was on TV. I remember even where we lived, it happened all over. People then, the drunk people, all gathering together, in big crowds, and you think, well, they're drunk. But that's not in the news the next day. That's not a big thing all over the papers, or the press or the media saying, oh, look at these people, because they're celebrating something about Britain, they're celebrating the Queen's speech or whatever. That's not in the papers about them being hand in hand, jumping and singing together or kissing and all this. That's not there. But then people are walking side by side, wearing gloves, a lot of them, and masks and all sorts. And there'll be all sorts about that. And then the same thing then. So just after the BLM, one of the walks I've seen, there was a big sporting team had been promoted, well, a small sporting team had won a league. So like won a football division. They promoted and it was all good. So then the football fans got in force and they're all out. The same people that are marching and peacefully and didn't cause any problems, they're out there. But now these are getting drunk, and as the day progresses, they're out in the heat and they're drinking more and more, and they're shouting things and all sorts of stuff. And that is volatile. You can't walk past that if you've got a family and stuff, because some of the people just want to be for a fight. That's what they do. They just want to fight. And that wasn't in the press. The press was all about the Black Lives Matter, all these protests that weren't protests, they were marches, and people were walking and getting together and trying to have a voice. And it's just not highlighted, is it? And one of the things that happened from the football, they leave smashed bottles and beer cans everywhere, and they've destroyed things. As the night gets on, they will break things and smash things and start fights. And it's just different, isn't it? It's just horrendous how you can see it obviously firsthand, how the press take one thing and, depending on what they want to sell or what they want to do, they sensationalise one thing but don't mention another. So it's scary. And we've had it on a tiny scale compared to what seems to happen in the US about all the militia and armed militia on the streets. It's just scary.
It is very scary. It's very scary because it changes the narrative and it changes perceptions, and it, or it supports people who are already thinking bad things. And and that goes in a whole nother wrong direction. You're exactly right. And there needs to be some accountability. There needs to be accountability for that, because our media should be reliable. It should be accurate. It should tell what's really happening. And you're right. It's glorified. It's inaccurate at times. Things that are happening that are great are not expressed or showed, and things like you're saying that spikes up our dopamine. If it's violence, if it's bad, if it's conflict, it's the news.
Yeah.
I think I counted on several incidents when I used to watch local news. The first news sources that were displayed, the average was 9. The first 9 news stories were all negative. The first 9, all negative, not one positive. And it started from the most to, well, after commercial, then we're going to go to this. And that was bad. And they put that strategically in there so you can watch all. I mean, it's horrendous. I think that's the word that you use to, describe this. Yeah. I want to ask about COVID. How has COVID affected you personally or your family? How are you all doing? First of all, is everyone healthy and safe? And okay,
it's challenging. So it's been really good. So my mother has COPD, breathing problems, and so for that I didn't see her for probably 4 or 5 months, which was horrible. Same as a lot of family members, we didn't see people because we were going into lockdown, and that was it. So for a while, and at the start it was kind of that panic because everyone's buying toilet roll and pasta and all these things people panic buy. yeah, we stuck together. We bought things for each other when we go somewhere, and that was good. But obviously, then we got to the point where we're in lockdown, and you can't go out and this kind of thing. We go to the local shop, and it was good. But like when we've got our son has got a lot of energy to burn off, the eldest one, and I think the two brothers, I've got one son he's 9 and his brother's 8, and then our daughters are 3 and 2. So it's a lot. They're on top of each other and all in one place. And luckily, we managed to move house last year anyway and get a bigger house, so more space. But I think they've had fights. They've gotten great one day and been really interested in things and built things together. And then next things, they're fighting and they're hitting each other and pulling hair and all sorts. But I think on the whole, it's been stressful. It's been like that. The girls are. If I'm in here in the daytime trying to get some work done, they'll be on my lap and they'll be jumping all over me and wanting to play or closing my computer off and all sorts. But on the whole, I think it's been good. It's been stressful, but it's been really nice as well to see that you can spend that much time together. But the children off school, we've tried to teach them at home certain things. But that's been, you see people on Facebook as well that have, they're parenting and they're doing all this and they're amazing, and they're the people you see on Instagram or something. Look at my child, they've done all sorts. Well, we haven't done that, but I don't feel bad for that either. I've been honest with the school and we said that as well. They're alive, they've had food and all this, and we're proud of that. They've got up and they've had food, they brush their teeth, they're still healthy. And I think a lot of people probably feel bad about they haven't done this much work or things like that, but it's difficult, especially if you've got children with ADHD or additional needs. That's difficult. But even so, even just having children at home and you've got work to do and look after children, and they all want your attention. So it's been difficult, and obviously now we're starting to ease up and go out places. It's strange. I mean, we can go out now, we can go out to shops and things, but yeah, obviously they're not back in school yet for a while, and it's kind of relaxing. People will go off and social distance, but even as attractions start opening up and you can have days out, it's still that kind of, should we go yet because it's so busy, or it's just different as well. Like some of the attractions are opening, but you can't really do a lot there, and that's strange.
Yeah, it is, right? Yeah, and that's how hopefully we'll get there soon in America, because I don't think we're close to getting there, and I'm not being pessimistic. It's just the reality. Like, we're at the verge right now of each state determining and each district determining when their kids are going back to school or how they're going to school, right? So we have these hybrids that may be happening where they start off virtually, and then after they're saying 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, they're going back to school. And I mean, it's just an estimation because we still don't have the community under control when it comes to this virus. And so, I'm not hesitating at all. When parents ask me the question, I say, listen, I know it's a privilege, but if you're able to make it out and schedule where your child is at home or in a safe place other than school, I highly recommend it. But I know everyone doesn't have that luxury. There's some families that don't have internet at home. So what's the point of being at home, right? Yeah. There's some kids who may find it safer at school, or they are getting free lunch, free lunches, so they're getting adequate meals at school. I mean, it's so many things that we can't just say, well, stay at home and that's going to be the best decision. It may not be the best decision for everybody. It had to be, empathetic and understanding that as well, right? And so, I think that this time has really opened up, hopefully, a lot of people's hearts and minds and becoming more empathetic about how the world has changed and how we need to go forward differently, not go back, but go forward. There's no going back to a normal. We only have to go forward and create a new normal for us, or however they want to say normal. I don't like saying normal because everyone's normal is different. But
yeah.
How to create a different guide, a different lifestyle for people. I have some kids with ADHD that are thriving. They're at home, they're working at their own pace. They may play video games to start off their day. That's awakening their mind. So here comes class at 10, summer school at 10, and they're just like thriving. No problems, no behavioral problems. No, I'm not getting in trouble. I'm just doing work. at 10 o'clock when my brain is there, my medicine's at its therapeutic level, I'm able to focus because there's not 20 other people in the classroom. I mean, we think about it, the reason why we go to school is really for the socialization. Because if we had the opportunity of learning on our own, because we all learn differently, we'd probably be in a different place, right? But we have to have those socialization as well. I get that. But I think that going forward, we should have some more options, more opportunities. And it's not just a one-way path, because everyone doesn't do well that one way. And you're right, it is weird. I haven't really been out that much either, and just kind of seeping back out and going out. I mean, I think the most common place I've been, like anybody else, is this grocery store. But when things start to open back up, how is that going to look? We're just thinking about the schools and things that we're really not ready for, but how's that going to look otherwise? For shopping, for, clothes shopping, for yoga. Just name it, because we're social beings. Everything is socially related. Yeah, it's a very good point. Going into the fall. Yeah.
It's worrying, I think, especially towards Christmas and as winter comes around and people do things and people will see each other or get gatherings but I think for like you say about the children in different environments, I mean, ours have got into baking and all these different things, and they've learned different things in different ways, and that's brilliant. But I think now more than ever, it'd be amazing if we could push things forward to let education systems understand that children do learn differently. Some people they'll struggle with school, they won't be able to sit down, they can't concentrate, and they can't learn in that same way, they can't absorb it the same way. There's too many distractions around them. But it would be amazing if we could do something now because of what's happened. And take it as, make a change for good to let children learn in different ways going forward. And I think a lot of children could do really well from that.
Exactly.
Like you say, obviously a lot of children will be stuck at home and not getting fed and not having 3 meals a day, and that's sad. That part is. But it'd be nice if we could, as things do go back to normal or start going back to what we had, to look back and say, well, actually, what could we do different than going forward? And we don't have to go to school every single day, or we don't have to sit 20 to 30 children in a classroom with one teacher learning that same way, because it doesn't all work for everyone.
That's right.
I think, I'm not sure what it's been like for you guys with, the local community and volunteers. But for me, I put a couple of forms on, obviously build websites. So I put some forms online and built a website for, the local area to get volunteers. And I did that and got like an army of people that wanted to help with all sorts of stuff for people.
Awesome.
And people were donating food and bringing like food to my door. We had loads of fresh fruit and stuff. So obviously people were locked in the house and couldn't go anywhere. And then people were contacting me. I had a radio station call and all sorts, like the BBC called me. But you realise there's people that live nearby that are elderly, like in their 80s, and they've got no family, or their nearest family might be in another country, might be in Scotland or somewhere else in the UK or overseas, and those people haven't got anybody. They don't have the internet. Some people, and they've got absolutely no one. So for those, I mean, I've met people locally. I've took them shopping. I've been and got some stuff and given them some supplies, and that's amazing. But after this, we brought this up at a political meeting. I said, after this has happened, we need to make sure that these people aren't forgotten about. And the people that are volunteers are probably happy to volunteer locally once in a while anyway. People do like to help, so this will hopefully, if certain people can make things continue, that we can still be involved with people locally and we can still help out, even if it's just calling someone, calling an elderly neighbour to check they're okay, or doing something for someone, collecting something or delivering something or whatever it is. And if that could happen, that'd be amazing if we can carry on, because obviously there are people isolated, all sorts of ages, and they've got no help. And there was one guy near me, we had food parcels. So I'm not sure how it's worked over there, but we've had food parcels for, the government were giving food to people. But it took a while for people to get the help. Some people were, highest risk people were going to, but it didn't happen. So my mum with the breathing problems, the breathing disease, she could have got some help, but that's how I checked, obviously, because she hadn't been contacted. And obviously my father can go out and buy shopping anyway, so it's fine, do the groceries, and they can go online to do that. But if they're not getting help, then what about the other people that are being missed off? So yeah, we did. But I checked one guy someone who contacted me through the radio station from another area. He lived alone, didn't have any food, he had loads of health conditions, and he wasn't getting any of this help from the government that should have been there. So I contacted people and found out who he can get help from. But then there was a point where he had to wait, a week or two. So I went to the local shop. I called the guy as well to check he was okay. Went to a shop, bought him some things like microwave meals because he was quite old and said he didn't cook and this. Took it round to him, but when he opened the door, he looked like really, really unwell, like gravely ill. He was like really skinny and grey looking, and he was only like, I think he was about 60.
Wow.
So he shouldn't look like that, and he looked horrendous. Yeah. But then obviously I gave him the food and put him in touch with the local government who were going to help him. But they contacted me to say, we've not been able to contact him for his food delivery. I went round at one point and knocked on the door. Because I've got contacts in the ambulance service, I called them to check if he'd called an ambulance, and he hadn't. And the police went and kicked the door in, and he was found there quite poorly. Had to go to hospital. He was quite poorly, had to go into hospital, and then eventually he got put in a care home. But then he died. Sadly, he died not long after. But he was like, that's someone who's got no help, was forgotten about, and that's really, really awful. He died, I think, a month later.
That's a very good point you bring up, Dan, because, like, for example, I'm a part of a large congregation for my church. And so, of course, there are many elderly that actually attend that church. And so they know who to check on. They're part of, we're divided in different neighborhoods. And so we have our different neighborhood meetings and we check on each other. But what about those who can't get out, who can't go to church, who can't go, to community centers, who can't get, like you're saying, like those who are forgotten about, you have no idea who they are, or those who don't just come out on the lawn and get the newspaper because they're enabled or disabled to do so, whatever the reason. Oh my goodness. I mean, it's
sad.
It's very sad. It's very sad. It's very sad. Yes, it is.
There was even people near us. There was a lady who was 80 something. But she was, obviously we were in lockdown, and you were told, if you're elderly, if you've got certain diseases and health conditions, don't go out, use a local service. And I was contacted by somebody, again, lived far away, for this lady who was still going off to get her groceries, and she was 80 something. She was going out on public transport because she didn't drive. She was going to the stores, and she shouldn't have been doing that. She could have got really poorly. Obviously she could have done this, but she wasn't getting the help. So it'd be nice, I think, if something comes out of COVID, for these kind of people and these groups that have been set up to carry on. And like I say, even if it's just phoning people to check on them. And I think there's community spirit that's come out in people. People like to help, and I think there's an opportunity now, isn't there, to make sure we keep doing that, and we support our neighbours, and
regardless of who they are.
Yeah.
Regardless of who they are. Yes. What's next for you, Dan? What's next on your agenda? Any idea? I know that there's a degree of uncertainty out there, and I guess, of course, that comes with, I mean, that's life itself in general. I get that. But what's on your plate now? I'll ask that. I'll ask it that way.
Yeah. So the daughters are so obviously lockdown has kind of thrown things all over the place, and I think for me, I kind of sat back, instead of like, just doing things as you do, like impulsively and not having a plan. Of course, took a step back and thought, well, I can work in my own time and there's no rush. And so my daughters will start nursery, like preschool, in September. So they'll go a couple of days a week. So I'll have that time anyway at home. And I think for me, it's kind of making sure this is regular, making sure I'm podcasting regularly and speaking to people, because that's amazing. Just chatting to people. And the marketing business, I've got paid monthly clients, so I'll get people now on, like, there's two tiers. Obviously, you custom big £5,000 to £10,000, £15,000, £20,000 or dollars websites, and then I've also understood that I can do something again to save my time and the things that I'm not great on. All the little bits where I'm doing one thing and kind of falling into the trap of just being stuck on that one thing. I've got done a service where it's for the people that couldn't afford some of the services, where they can pay once, like a low fee, and they'll get a website. It'll be for them, but that website isn't a big custom site. It's a 5-page. You pay a monthly fee, I'll set it up, and that's it. Then done. So it's kind of building on that, but then focusing mainly on helping people with ADHD and seeing what we can do with it. So I've written ebooks and guides, and it's kind of figuring out the best way to put it out for people to do it. But again, the start of this happened, and I was speaking to people, and I put in a Facebook group, ADHD business owners. What would you like to do? How would you learn? Is it videos? Is it reading things? Because I can get a document. I wouldn't always read that because I haven't got the time. But then I don't always like watching a long video because I'll get bored and switch off, and I just want the main point. And so I spoke to people like that, and I had some really good feedback to help me shape what we do. But some people were saying, I'll pay for it now. I was getting a message saying, put it out there now as it is, and I'll pay for that monthly, or I'll buy a course now, rather than being perfected or polished. And that was a good opportunity. But again, I didn't do that because of my own. It gets to that point, doesn't it, where I was doing things and everything's going on at home. And I think we need to realise that you need to just take action sometimes to do that. So I'm working obviously myself and what we can do, but trying to figure out the best way then of going forward and helping more people as a group.
Yeah, awesome. Really. Awesome. Like my business coach said, imperfect action doesn't matter. First of all, it's never going to be perfect because we're not perfect, and that's okay. But if you have an idea, just go for it. Just go for it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Just go for it. Yes. Dan, thank you. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, it's been brilliant.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing parts of your story. Really appreciate this. And it just lets us know that we're one and the same. We're one and the same. And not even referencing what we look like and our gender or our background. I mean, just different parts of the world, you know what I'm saying? And even though there are significant differences as far as support and acknowledgement, perceptions and all of that, the common denominator is us as human beings. And I appreciate you, my friend. I really do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate your understanding, your empathy. You get it. You are promoting, seriously, you're promoting just for many causes, whether it's ADHD, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's equality, equity. You're in the forefront of that, and we really appreciate you and what you're doing. And keep on. And you have a friend in me, so
yeah,
you let me know.
That's it.
You need me. I'm there.
I would say as well. I think for a lot of people, again, the last thing, sorry. I think just when you realise, especially if you're struggling with something, if you put it out there and tell people, or it doesn't have to be in public, it could be somewhere private. But once you find that and find out the thing you're struggling with, it's not just you. There's always going to be someone in the same position, and even if they're not through that yet, even if that person's at the same point and they haven't got it all figured out, you could sometimes speak to that person, or by you putting it out there, they could be as brave as you could, and they could do the same thing. And you get help, but you're also helping someone else. Yes. And you don't know what can happen from that. You could spark, you could work together, you could just help each other. And it's just amazing, isn't it? From all over the world, you can do that, and you can go on. You can go on the internet, and there's so many places, isn't there? But these things you struggle with, you're not the only one. Most of the time, someone else has got the exact same problem, or has been there and has figured it out.
That's right. Exactly. Man, that's a very good point. And I just want to rephrase that. I want to reiterate all your points, because you make some awesome points. Oftentimes, we try to find someone who's already been through something, right? Because they've been through it. Seldom do we find someone or know someone that is going through while we're going through. And that's so ironic you bring that up, because I've had probably more than 5-10 friends that we've had the conversation like, wow, we're going through the same thing at the same time. Like, we're trying to figure this out together, even though we're individuals, right? We have the same journey, and there's a reason for that. I really truly believe coincidence is God's doing, and I believe that there are people that come into your life that help you get through things, and they may be going through the same or similar thing. but they're there to help you get through it, and you were there to help them. So thanks for bringing that up, because that's important to acknowledge as well, for sure. Yeah,
definitely.
That's why it's so important to talk about it. It's so important to talk about it. Be able to talk about what you're going through, because you never know. You never know. Your healing starts with talking about it. That's where it starts. That's where it starts. Yeah.
I think as well, it doesn't always have to be, you know, if some people don't want to put things on social media, it doesn't have to be that.
Right.
There's so many places, isn't there? Like Reddit, for a start, reddit.com. You know, if you go on there, you can find, they have subreddits, but you could find, you know, people talking about things. They don't have to know who you are. That could be, you know, completely anonymous. So you can find people there that will talk about absolutely anything. And then again, you don't have to put it on, just worried about people reading what you're saying or these kind of things if you don't want that to happen. But yeah, just look for help.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. For help. Because we all need help. We all can use some help. It's a courageous move. It's something that we were designed to do. We're designed to ask for help. None of us have it together, all together. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay. Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Dan.
No, thank you.
Oh man, thank you so much. I told you I wouldn't hold you over. Look.
That's okay. We don't mind.
I promise with you.
Yeah.
Thanks your wife and your beautiful children. Please tell them hello for me. You know, I know it's late there, and I really do appreciate your time and for catching up. Thanks, friend. I really appreciate you. I'm here for you.
And you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. All right, y'all. Share this with everyone you know. We thank our guest, Dan G, for coming on and sharing with us. And please go support. Wait. We got to support you, Dan. I definitely don't want you here without saying, how can we support you? I think I put a couple of your websites up here. So this is the HUXO website here. And I know you have the ADDtrepreneur. So I have to put that. I'm going to put that up here in the promo as well, for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so please support Dan, you all. He is an awesome person, awesome being, doing amazing things globally. So we definitely want to support you. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Be safe, mask up. That's how we're going to get through this. You all take care. Have a wonderful evening. Good night. Bye-bye. I got no rules, I count 'em. I got no rules, I count 'em.
Hi, I'm Dr. 𝗘𝗢𝗗𝗏, your board-certified family medicine physician specializing in urgent care. We are doing drive-through rapid antibody testing for COVID-19 with follow-up PCR testing when needed. We're doing this at the office of Dr. 𝗀𝗽𝗏 Skin Wellness Centers of Alabama, 1920 Huntington Road, 35209. We're doing this Monday, Thursdays, and Fridays from 8 until 12. It's $125 for the assessment as well as the test with Dr. 𝗘𝗢𝗏. Contact us for an appointment at drcelestc19.com. Thank you.